Hello my windy peeps, this is Ket aka Kakibot, and January is now officially over, which means that the one and only January roundup is here. In this video we are gonna be talking about if January is an interesting or good month to visit Edinburgh and Scotland, and what is there to do. Okay, so we're gonna start with the general vibe and weather. So last year we had like a beautiful sort of like snowy winter wonderland winter, and I don't think that's coming back anytime soon. I think that was just a freak year, and before that I've never experienced that ever myself. So let's just kind of base this off the years when that didn't happen. So the temperature is usually quite mild. This year it was kind of lingering between like 5 and 10 degrees, so like on paper it actually sounds really warm, but the wind is at its coldest and there's a lot of it. And this year especially we had, from what I remember, especially like the stronger ones, 3 big storms. Usually here when you say storm, you don't mean like a thunderstorm, you know, no like thunderbolts and lightning, all of that. You mean like wind, like destructive levels of wind. And we had one at the start of the month, that was Storm Arwen. That one destroyed quite a lot of older trees up in the countryside, and now at the end of the month we got 2 more. Those both managed to fit into one weekend, so you can imagine that that was fun. And we were in the countryside for those 2, so yeah, and we lost electricity and we lost mobile network and we lost water, so then we just drove back to Edinburgh and hoped for the best. In general, if you see that a storm is coming your way, if you have the option to stay in one of the larger cities, that's probably better. Larger cities tend to not be affected by it as much. I think that the larger city like Edinburgh or Glasgow is much more likely to be affected by something like a lot of maybe ice and snow, while the countryside might be okay with snow, but obviously in the countryside a lot of the smaller roads might get blocked by trees and such. So yeah, keep that in mind. If you are coming to Edinburgh or Scotland this time of year, you definitely need to bring something very windproof, because the wind, as always, is going to be the biggest issue. But in the summer the wind can be refreshing. In winter the wind really makes the difference between you feeling kind of like, ooh, what a nice mild winter, and just like feeling like you're gonna die. So yeah, gloves, earmuffs, hats, whatever fits your ears. I'm not a hat person for some reason, but earmuffs are my jam. Now we're gonna have a look at some b-roll of the city that I kind of took over my random little walks in the city center, and you're gonna see that the weather was actually quite pleasant, but it usually in January looks better than it feels. Let's go. So by this point you probably know, like if you've been to Scotland a couple of times or if you're interested in Scotland, you have a hunch that January is actually kind of important culturally, because it's when Burns Night is happening. So that happens on Robert Burns' birthday, which is 25th of January, and Robert Burns is our national poet, our national bard, and he is much beloved by many people, not everyone, but a lot of people. And even STV, the Scottish TV, ran a poll couple of years ago, out of which Robert Burns came out as the most important Scot of all times. The way he is celebrated on his night is usually with a Burns supper, and I would say that the 2 most important components of a Burns night supper are reading his poetry and eating haggis and, you know, wider selection of Scottish cuisine. But I would say haggis is very important because between his poetry and Scottish cuisine there's an overlap, which is the poem Address to a Haggis, which is kind of just like almost like a love letter to haggis being the best of meat products. It is! Look it up! If you're visiting Edinburgh or Glasgow, you will find out that many restaurants and pubs, especially outside of the pandemic, obviously, are throwing events for Burns Night. That's a fun thing to do, but if you ask me, I think that the best way of spending Burns Night is with your friends and family. Again, if you're visiting and you don't quite know how to do that, local supermarkets will make it easier for you because I would say that like the 3 weeks in the run-up to Burns Night, the ales are just filled with delicious Scottish, like, ready-to-cook meals, so anything from like actual haggis to haggis pizza, and yeah, like it's getting kind of more and more fun every year. This year M&S had this like a cheese bake, so you would get the like clay ramekin with like a layer of cheese, and under it you had a layer of haggis. That was the one thing that was very reliably sold out in all the M&S's that I visited when I was trying to take a picture of that for you, but at least I managed to go to other supermarkets and got some shots of what they had for you. Let's have a look. I also have a little fun fact for you. Apparently in Canada, about 20 years ago, someone started like a joint celebration of Burns Night and Chinese New Year, and it's apparently called Gang Haggis Fat Choi. And it's so it's this beautiful overlap of two cultures, and I love it. If you're from Canada, let me know if you've ever heard of this. Next up is a tip for art fans. This is something that actually was submitted to me by one of my subscribers. Thank you, Beth. And that is that the National Galleries of Scotland, they have a show of the J.M.W. Turner paintings every year in January. And the reason for that is that in January the sun has like so little force, you know, the sun is so gentle, it's at its gentlest, that they are just like not worried to take these very sort of fragile paintings out and, you know, leave them out for people to appreciate them, because, you know, the climate is just painting safe. And apparently the National Galleries of Scotland have been doing this for over 100 years now, so, you know, that's an impressive tradition, and you can kind of count on it. It's not just something that's been around for a couple of years. This is something that happens every January, so if you're a proper art fan, I think this should be on your list. It's also, I believe, free to attend, so basically, you know, nowadays you basically always have to book a ticket. Maybe next year that's not gonna be the case, but the ticket is £0. Yeah, you should give it a go. Art-wise, we also visited this little, how do you call it, like an installation. It was like one of those kind of like art, like animation projections. It was called The Message in the Skies, and it was like in this old church organized by the Hogmanay Festival people, and it basically entailed like standing in this beautiful sort of smallish church, watching this like animation progress and listening to this narration of poems that were essentially about earth and, you know, taking care of it and respecting it and, you know, being good to it before, you know, it gets very angry at us. So yeah, I did get some shots of that, so let's have a look at those. Also, this is less of a cultured activity, but January obviously is the month for sales. And, you know, I would say that you get the summer sales, of course, but those are kind of harder to predict, like when exactly they're gonna happen. While in January, if you're into shopping, everyone's gonna have sales on. We now have St. James Quarter, which is good for clothes shopping. So again, if that's your jam, you should give that a go. On some of the days when the weather maybe isn't so like touristy, activity friendly, it can be fun to, you know, spend some of the funds you still have left over after Christmas. I don't really have any, but if you do, good for you. There's also some kind of like outlier things going on in Edinburgh and like all of UK in January. I would say, you know, you have dry January, which sometimes means that in like some pubs and places you get more of a like a non-alcoholic drink or mocktail selection. Sometimes, you know, in the past we got like non-alcoholic bar pop-ups for January. That was fun. Also Veganuary. Supermarkets will usually like really ramp up the selection of vegan meals, especially like ready meals. They're really trying to kind of get into that niche. So if you're a vegan, then January in Scotland and in the UK might be a good month to kind of explore what there is on offer in supermarkets and smaller shops too. And of course the Chinese New Year, the Lunar New Year, which actually was I think last night. And Edinburgh has a really strong connection to China. There's a huge community of Scottish Chinese people. So honestly, it's just a Google away. Like, if you're ever here around the Chinese New Year, I really recommend giving it a Google and finding out what's on, because there's basically always going to be some events around that, and that's just a really nice thing to join and, you know, enjoy. Okay, so I think that's it from me for this month. Next month we're gonna have probably some lovey Valentine's Day things. Honestly, usually when I'm like getting ready before the month starts, I'm pretty sure nothing happens ever during this month. And then at the end of it, I realize, wow, so many things are going on. So yeah, hopefully February is going to be just as fun as January, and I shall see you soon. Bye.